So first of all, thank you so much LUMS and Pakistan Renewable Energy Coalition for having hosted this and gotten all the experts together. I'm still a student of the energy sector. I don't have any engineering degree. My only relationship with the sector was when I was a minister for a year in 2017. And then I was given this responsibility by the government now, this time about 6 months ago. So I'll try to put before you, first of all, the excess baggage that we have to work with and we have on us as a liability, all the fault lines that prevail in the power sector, and then try to fit the renewable part as something that could get the country's energy dilemma to be resolved and sorted out. So first of all, we've inherited an extremely expensive and unsustainable the power sector. The costs are way too much. It's not competitive in the region. The generation cost of electricity is way too high. We're okay on the transmission and the distribution side as far as the costs are concerned. But on the generation side, it's too much. It's not affordable. When we sit down with IPPs to discuss as to what they can do about it and what we could do about it and what we could mutually come to as an understanding and try to get the tariffs to be rationalized, they do also accept that, yes, it's not sustainable. When the demand is going down by the day, we had some calculations that we did the other day, and somebody informed me that August, year-on-year demand for the industry has gone down by more than about 15%. That is scary. So with these kinds of things, we inherited the power sector with these conditions. So we're looking at reduction in the taxes, we're looking at bringing in more efficiency into the transmission systems by investing into the key constraints that our transmission sector faces today. And there are many of them. And the removal of these constraints could actually translate into a reduction in the price for the consumer. That could also translate into more efficient usage of indigenous resource, may it be fossil fuel or clean energy or hydel or solar or wind. We are already curtailing wind power as we speak. The cheaper plants on the local coal are not being dispatched because of lack of transmission infrastructure. And even the hydel part, if you don't go all out and invest into certain transmission lines that could help evacuate the power coming in from the upcoming hydel projects, Pakistan would be seriously facing issues within the next 1 or 2 years. So the efficiency within the transmission system is being looked at as one of the key reforms in the power sector. We are trying to get the furnace oil part of the generation out of the system. We've already started negotiating with about 5 IPPs which are producing power on furnace oil. We've already started speaking to the others who would be shifted onto a take and pay kind of a regime instead of us paying heavy capacity payments for. The power sector reforms also include very aggressive work that has been initiated on the disco privatization part of it. 3 companies have already been offered to the Privatization Commission to go ahead with the transaction. The financial advisor should be in place next month. So by the middle of next year, you should have 3 distribution companies privatized. And by the end of next year, you should have another 2 companies that would have been given out on the concession agreement model, which is Sakkar and Hyderabad. So out of the 10 distribution companies, at least half or a little more than half should have been privatized by the end of next year, therefore plugging the holes that exist within the distribution sector, which is a constant drain of close to 600 billion rupees on the national exchequer, and it is really stifling the growth and the amount of money that we could invest into the public sector development program. We are also making very good progress on the competitive energy markets. An entity that's supposed to be created called the Independent System Market Operator, that's supposed to extract two very important parts of NTDC and CPPA out and form one company, which is the ISMO, which would be the basis of competitive markets to operate on. That is, the summary has been sent to the Prime Minister and for the Cabinet to consider. So within the next 1 month, we should hope to have this ISMO registered and operational with NTDC and CPPA's existing workforce contributing into the company. So ISMO, the creation of ISMO would then help us move towards realizing the dream of wheeling energy on an efficient basis to the bulk consumers in the first phase and to others in the next. This was actually committed by the Power Division to happen in the year 2009, but still has not been a reality for us. So we are hoping that inshallah within the next 1 year or so, we should have the bulk consumers actually having an environment in place where they could buy renewable and efficient power from producers, and that power could be, those electrons could be wheeled all the way to the premise of these businesses. And the competitive market, we are hoping that in the next 3 to 4 years would evolve and mature into something that could translate into the real bilateral energy market that could bring down the price of energy and could remove us or extract us from this kind of an environment where CPPA could be the only buyer. So that's the only way to push Pakistan out of the single buyer model. And then we're also investing and hoping to invest a lot. We've already started talking to the Chinese investors to convert our imported coal plants into local coal-based plants. And we started running the studies and the feasibilities and the economic and the technical and the financial feasibilities for this conversion. And we hope that our energy mix could be a lot, the energy price of power itself could really come down substantially because of this. This might have an impact of close to 2 rupees per unit as far as the energy price of the entire pool is concerned. We are also aggressively investing into something called a power information system. We have a company called PITC, but the role of PITC has been just restricted to offering billing services to the distribution companies, and that's about it. PITC needs to evolve or be converted into the repository of real-time and very properly verified and the credibility data, because data in the power sector is the most important thing and is the key. Unfortunately, even us policymakers at times have serious concerns on the credibility of the data that we have actually provided from time to time. So we are trying to set in place a system within the next year where PITC could be a repository for the entire power sector's data that could then use analytical tools to be able to come up with good proper the suggestions and policy interventions for the policymakers to make. The most important part of our reforms is to set in place an efficient technical arm of the power division. The power division needs to make serious policy interventions from time to time. It's not just once in 6 months or once in 3 months, but almost on a weekly basis we are faced with situations where we need to make a policy decision one way or the other. For these policy decisions to be made, we need technical expertise. These technical expertise are unfortunately not available to us. We rely on World Bank giving us some consultants from time to time, helping us through the technical assistance programs that they are able to fund for us. The Asian Development Bank doing that, the USAID doing that. But there is no in-house facility available in the form of technical expertise which could actually support the power division to make all the key policy decisions. There are secretaries that we have, there are additional secretaries and joint secretaries, and then political people or the technocrats in the form of ministers and SAPMs and ministers of state. But I don't think we are all armed enough with the expertise that are required to handle and to take forward this very complex power sector. I don't think if we continue to do or make, if we continue to have policy interventions based on just hearsay, which has been, by the way, happening in the past. In the past 3 or 4 decades, there has not been a considered, well thought out, researched way of even adding generation capacity to the profile that we have, that exists today. It's all been done in a rush all the time. Pakistan used to face all the load shedding that we used to in the past, and every government was in a hurry to do something within the next 2 to 3 years and try to get Pakistan out of it and get the political so-called constituency of theirs to clap for us, appreciating that we've ended load shedding, but at what cost? What energy mix have we been investing into? What is going to be the future? What happens if the indigenous part of that energy mix is not enough to provide Pakistan the kind of energy security that Pakistan must have? So all these things require proper technical information, use of complex softwares and applications that are used elsewhere in the world. Then we've also been relying on growth projections that might have been just a dream for us. So all the demand projections in the future that Pakistan has made in the past have all been at, say, an assumption of 6% growth rate. So when that 6% is not actually achieved, the demand is not actually materialized, and then we end up in capacities that are unutilized and the rest of the pool of consumers being burdened with that unutilized capacity. We're also looking at seriously bringing in an environment where the tariff slabs in Pakistan are absolutely uniform. We need to give out a bill that clearly states that every consumer needs to build a certain amount according to a certain rate. And then whoever needs to be subsidized needs to be through a social protection program for people to be in the, for people not to easily exploit this kind of a tariff slab structure that exists within Pakistan. Then we're also looking at, we're not just looking at, all these things are happening, by the way. In the past 6 months, the kind of progress that we've made in all these power sector reform areas has been very has been extremely encouraging, and the people at the Power Ministry and other professionals who are actually helping us, they have a key role to play in this. Then we are also pursuing an aggressive program on the energy conservation side. I think MD Nika would have spoken on this platform earlier this morning. Nika has been tasked to come up with this program that we are about to roll out next month, although it's not a good time to roll out this program because usage of fans would be going down up in the northern parts of the country. But at least in the south it will start picking up. So we are looking at a conservation program where fans could be made more efficient, that could bring down our so-called peak demand by a good few thousand megawatts if this transition actually happens over the next few years. We have a very unhealthy demand curve. So we actually peak out, and most of the peak that happens over and above the 11,000 so-called megawatts of demand that exists in the country is all fans and air conditioners and inefficient building codes that Pakistan has in place. So the energy conservation part of it would really in the long term help Pakistan achieve a much healthier demand profile that could help the policy makers avoid any investments into energy that are not required for a productive manner and in a consistent enough manner. So I'll just give you an example. There are about 3,500 megawatts that are there in place in our entire generation capacity that are used just for about 200 hours or 250 hours in a year out of the 8,760 hours in a year. So this is the luxury and the cost of luxury that one has to pay, and this is something that Pakistan and the power sector of Pakistan can't really afford. So we've also, by the grace of God, reached a point where NTDC, the transmission arm of the power sector, is going to be now split up into 3 parts. We're not happy with the way the projects are rolled out and they're actually developed and then handed over to the asset management part of NTDC and the operations part. So we are actually going to be making another company by the name of NGC, the projects. That will be a very slim and efficient company with very top-class professionals in it. And we are going to adopt an outsourcing kind of a model where the rollout and implementation of projects that are much required for transmission to come into place. In spite of having all the funds available, most of our transmission projects are delayed by over 4 to 6 years. That's very unfortunate. And every day that the projects are actually delayed, it's adding on to the cost of electricity for the consumer. So the 660 transmission line that the Chinese invested into, that's been underutilized for years now, just because the Lahore grid project has not come into place. So the NGC project part of NTDC would ensure that we don't have any such problems occurring in the future. Then the other part of NTDC would be a part of the independent system market operator, who would be responsible for all the planning of the future energy that Pakistan needs to have and needs to buy. Now, who does that? I'll just give you a little flavor of what the situation is right now. So there's something called IGSEP. IGSEP is a way and a software and a way in which these professionals like Dr. Fayaz sit down and other people in NTDC. So they feed in all these assumptions into this software. And on the basis of those assumptions, the software actually comes up with the least cost, the methodology-based requirement for power in the future. So now I'm not talking of the previous power plants that already exist in the system. Now I'm talking of the future, the committed plants that Pakistan has already inked contracts with. You'll be very happy to know, as far as clean energy is concerned, that the next 17,000 megawatts of plants being added on to our profile are all hydel or nuclear. So one nuclear, everything else is hydel. So it's all clean energy. So we don't have anything to worry about in that sense. But it's not on a least cost methodology. So out of the 17,000 megawatts of plants that we are supposed to add on, that we cannot avoid adding on, that we've already committed, this is also excess baggage that we have, only 87 megawatts fulfill the criteria of least cost basis. That is scary. What do we need to do about it? So we started having a very serious look at the future plants that are supposed to come on to our profile and see what could be done and what part of the cost of those plants need to be drawn out of the pool of the amount that needs to be, that the consumers would be ultimately burdened with. So we need to nationalize that part of the debt or investment that's going into every plant. For instance, the Mohmand Dam project, it's about to be completed. We've already spent money. The tariff of this Mohmand Dam has not been trued up and it's not available to the plant. But we know that's going to be very expensive. So who takes the burden of it? Why should the consumer take the burden of it? The consumer should only expect the government to invest into plants that are there on the least cost methodology. So we've reopened the entire discussion within the Power Ministry regarding the least cost methodology. So from within TCEP, this IGCEP, there's another very important part, which is the transmission planning part. So what kind of transmission systems need to be invested into where, what parts of the country, what load centers need to be fed with what kind of energy. Here comes the role of the transmission system to be able to accommodate good, healthy, renewable, clean energy. Unless we have a transmission system that can support future technologies and renewables coming into the system that are going to be brought into place in a very distributed manner, with the battery prices going down, with the solar prices going down, with individuals investing into such power producing small IPPs of 10 kilowatts and 1 megawatt and half a megawatt in the future. When the batteries costs start coming down, that's when the base load part of Pakistan's issues could also have another very serious problem. So I don't want to call it a problem, it might be a good problem to have, that are so-called base load plants that are based on fossil fuel would be then replaced by the so-called battery storage that could be economically and feasibly available for people to start throwing back into the system. I'll also like to now share some facts with you. So we did a little bit of stock taking. Pakistan doesn't have any issues as far as the generation part is concerned of the energy being clean or not. We are fairly clean. So when they talk, when I was going through the concept note that this energy conference had authored, they talked about the region having 68% fossil fuels. Pakistan is 54%. Pakistan is 54% clean energy right now. So last year, we produced all the energy that was produced in Pakistan, 54% was from clean sources. This is going to go up to 82% by the year 2034. This is not just a dream. This is according to the profile that Pakistan has already committed to in a more expensive manner. So hydropower that we were investing into is not cheap. And the international community, when they finance such projects, which is another very important part of this conference today, they don't care whether you're investing into clean energy or not. They are financing your projects which are absolutely front-loaded. They have extra insurance costs on Pakistan. The country risk is The country risk part of it, these projects are burdened with high insurance costs, high interest rates, irrespective of whether we invest into clean energy. So no financial institution has ever come to Pakistan or an IPP's owner who's investing into clean energy and said, hey, you are investing into clean energy, I'm going to give you a concessional rate or even a rate that I'm giving in other countries. But since your country risk is higher, since whatever else, you will be charged a lot more. And they do not finance us even over the period of the project itself, over the life of the project. So all these projects are front loaded. So the tariffs, we might be having a levelized tariff over the year of the project, but the first 12 years are front loaded. So all that debt needs to be paid back and serviced by us, irrespective of whether it's a coal project or a hydro project or a solar project or a wind project over the first 10 years, thus making every injection of power into the system an expensive way to do it. So this is where the financial institutions and the so-called climate change, the gurus of this world, this is the way Pakistan has been treated in the past, in spite of taking the brunt of it all in terms of climate change. So 11 floods in the past 8 to 9 years of catastrophic scale. Pakistan has gone through all that, and unfortunately nobody cares. So I'm sure such events would be able to draw the attention of financiers who are there in the region to be looking at Pakistan and being a little more fair to us than they are. As far as the fossil fuels are concerned, in the next 8 to 9 years, we would be reducing the fossil fuel part of our energy to produce power from 46 to 18%. I'm not talking of combustion engines, I'm not talking of transport, I'm just talking of the power sector, the portfolio. So on the power sector side, the fossil fuels contribution to energy on an annual basis would come down from 46 to 18 by the year 2034. We also would be increasing our energy profile of the indigenous based energy from 75 to 94% by the year 2034. I've also been given this figure by a researcher in my office that you would be knowing about this a lot more, that Pakistan in terms of per capita emissions is quite low. It's not as high as the other countries are, and in spite of being low, we are taking the brunt of climate change impact across the country every year, in fact every month of every year. So in my humble opinion, our energy transition needs to be looked at in the context of overall economic transition. That's very important. We need to also focus on trying to bring down the cost of our base load. The cost of base load is absolutely key and critical to us. When we financially model the entire power sector tariff, we have to take into consideration this. Last year, Pakistan imported more than 60 gigawatts of solar panels into the country. We are expected to add on over 1,200 megawatts on our solar net metering systems on the grid every year from now until 2034. That is quite significant. And this increases, this forces us to start looking at and investing into and redesigning our grid for distributed renewables to be added on into the system. The battery prices, as I said, are going down. It might be within the next 4 to 5 years going completely off grid on battery systems would be absolutely economically feasible. Our grid needs to actually evolve for the future, keeping these technologies in mind. We are wanting to move away from fossil fuels, but in a healthy and affordable and responsible manner. Uh, you'll be very happy to know that just about 3-4 days ago, we also have approved, we are about to announce it in the next 2-3 days. We've approved the EV regulations for battery swapping stations and EV charging stations. We are also involved and are closely working with the Ministry of Industries to come up with some policy guidelines for the regulator to consider an electronic vehicle electricity tariff that could further encourage people to move from combustion engines to electrically driven vehicles, especially for the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers. That's where the real saving is. That's where I've been told we are spending about 4 to 5 billion US dollars a year on the import of fossil fuels every year. That's where so in my humble opinion, it's not the generation part of power that needs all the attention for finances to look at Pakistan and climate change on. I think it's more on the mobility of electrons and the offtake of these electrons in the form of electric vehicles that needs the attention of the financiers to put in money in a concessional manner and in a market competitive manner inside our country. So these were the key things that I thought would be interesting to share with you. We're actually also wanting to bring in or introduce specific programs that could get people to move from the so-called grid onto more renewable solutions. That is the appetite these days of most provinces. But we need to be very careful on how we do it and do it in a very responsible manner. I made some calculations, our people made some calculations the other day. So if you give in the form of subsidy solar panels to people who are spending more than 200 units in a month or between 200 and 500 units, getting that customer off grid to the extent of the power being produced by those solar panels actually has a negative effect on your economy and on the kind of expense that we have to incur. So every 1.2 kilowatt solar system that is given free of cost to somebody who is between the 300 and the 500 unit slab adds on a burden of 87,000 rupees every consumer, 87,000 rupees on the grid. So the rest of the entire pool of customers get an impact of 87,000 rupees for every customer that this kind of an investment is made into. The other thing is the solar net metering part. I'd love to speak on this. There was so much hue and cry a few months ago when we had started discussing the possibility of tweaking some of the regulations on solar net metering, that we just had to keep quiet because the budget was on its way and there were other political implications to it. But I don't think we'll be able to keep quiet anymore. There has to be a responsible transition towards a healthier solar net metering regulation. This regulation is not sustainable anymore. So I was the one who actually started the solar net metering program and environment in this country back in 2017. I very clearly remember they never used to allow anybody to do it. So trying to get a green meter was a very big issue. It's become a big issue now too because of more demand and less supply of green meters probably. or it was a regulatory issue at that time. So we had encouraged it. It's had a very healthy growth, but not anymore. So I'll just give you some numbers. If you continue to have the same regulations and the pricing structure for solar net metering system that you have now for the existing ones, and you do not disturb their contracts, and we plan not to do that. So anybody's contract that we've signed with the solar net meter owner is going to be there until the expiry of that contract period. So nobody's going to touch that. So whoever's invested into it will keep on getting returns on the same rate that they are actually getting right now. But if we continue to add the next 1200 megawatts every year onto the solar net metering systems at the same regulations and the prices, this will cost the rest of the pool. And who is the rest of the pool? They are the poor people. Who are these solar net meter owners? They are rich people. There are 125,000 solar net metering owners in this country right now. All of them are upper income level classes. They're not even mid income level classes. So the next year, if another 1200 megawatts is added, just the impact of that 1200 megawatts according to the regulations that exist today would be 46 billion rupees a year, which translates into 46 paisas per unit cost across the pool of users of this country. And the year after that, you add on another 1200 megawatts, and it will go up to 88. And in the year 2027, your overall pool price of electricity would be 1.5 rupees more expensive, and they'll be subsidizing these 200,000 or 300,000 solar net meter owners. So the poor guys and the exchequer of Pakistan would be providing a windfall income to these solar net meter owners. So we're not wanting to completely finish this off at all. We want this to continue. We want distributed renewable energies to keep coming onto the system, but in a healthy manner. So what we're planning to do is, we're still working on it. Hopefully we should be done very soon. And then it's up to the federal cabinet to approve it or not. What we're wanting to do is that we bring down the prices, or the regulations are changed to a point where the payback period for any solar net metering system is about 4.5 to 5 years, which is a very reasonable one. Right now it's much less than that. So, but we can't continue the way we are right now. So those were the some of the things that I thought were important to mention. If I forgot to say something that's of interest to you, please feel free to ask me in the question and answer session. Thank you so much.